Okay, we've got the motor apart, and we've made a few discoveries here and there, some good, some not so good. Good one is, when I open the spring barrel, I discovered this does actually have a brand new spring in it. Cat hair on it already. It's not lubricated yet, but that's the spring. I had it out already. Took the lubrication was good, obviously being brand new, but I took it off anyway. I like to use my own lubrication so I know what's in there, how much is in there. But that's brand new spring, brand spanking new. So that is a good thing. However, I did discover that the tiny ball bearing that goes right in there was missing. Not good, because then everything's misaligned. The shaft, the bearing rides right here between this and the plate there. This has play in it, like that. So what's happening is this is bottomed out. It's riding in the wrong position on the governor. That gear right there. And the record is sitting a little too low. The turntable ends up sitting like this, possibly even rubbing that dowel pin there. Not good. So we're gonna have to source one of those. I think I have one in a parts machine somewhere. And then we discovered this. That is the friction leather. That is not a good friction leather. Nothing wrong with with continuing to use a friction leather that's 100 years old if the leather is good. That means it's been lubricated over the years. It's not like this, which is basically worn down to a nub and rotted. Not good. So we've got a brand new one on there, and we'll adjust that when we put the motor together. They didn't take out the winding assembly, the gear here, and the non-return spring, which is that spring right in there. You can just barely see it. That was caked up with some nasty grease, but we got that out of there. That's all good now. If you want to have a smooth wind, you got to clean that. And the governor's in good shape, which makes me suspect that somebody's been working on this. I could see some of the screws do show signs, can't really see it on camera, I don't think, that they've been apart. Now, HMV uses basically the same governor as Victrola, as Victor does, but there are differences, one of which is the spring and the weight are riveted together there. You see the rivet? Right, let's see if I can get close. Right in there. So they don't unscrew. On Victrolas, they do. So this actually has to be replaced as an entire assembly with the spring and the weight. While Victrola, you can just replace the spring and reuse the weights that are on there. Now, the secret to these is, should you have a broken spring on an HMV motor like this, all you need to do is get the spring set and weights with the little screws for the Victrola governor, or an entire Victrola governor, and simply swap it in there, and it works. That's all. That's all you gotta do with that. This one's in very good shape. Nice arc to the springs. There's nothing wrong with them. I suspect all three of them were replaced, probably at the same time the mainspring was, which is a nice little find. The mainspring for one of these things is, well, I'd have to probably import it from Europe or the UK, and that would end up costing me about 75 bucks before I was done. So that's pretty good. There is a Victrola equivalent. This is a 1-inch spring. You can use the spring that the Victor Victrola the 4th uses, the single spring motor, with the pear-shaped hole on one end and the bent arbor on the other. They were used, I believe, 1917, 18, 19, possibly 1920 on the Victrola 4, the Victrola the 4th, the single spring motor that was used in those. Not the one that was used in the Victor Victrola 50, as that has a bent end on both ends. This has to have the pear-shaped hole on one side and the bent end on the other, you see right there. And that interchanges. Like so many parts between HMV and Victor, this is just another example of parts interchangeability. Yeah, I'm still in the assembly stage here, in the cleaning stage. There's more to be done. There's a lot of work that goes into doing this sort of thing. This has already been through the parts washer. You can see what I'm doing here. You see that mess right in here? That is hard packed black graphite that's just packed in there, and the only way to get that out, I have found, nothing else really works, is to, where's my pick? is to get in there with one of these and work it out a little bit at a time. Yes, it's time consuming, but that's really the only way you're going to get it out of there. And you really don't know how much of that is actually dirt and how much is black graphite. You just want to get it out. And it'll help the gear last a lot longer with fresh grease on it and all of that. And as you see, you have to do it on these. This will take a while, but I'll get it done eventually. Then I got to do the brass gear. Never ever put these on a wire wheel, because this is brass and you will wear it instantly. Never put it on a wire wheel. You have to pick it out carefully, and don't pick heavy. You got to very gently get in there and just pick out the black nasty crud in there, and don't get too carried away. You don't want to scratch it. You don't want to cause wear to this gear, or that will lead to motor noise and early failure. This one at least has the plate, like these early ones do, with the 4 screws. Later on, they went to the same type of clip that Victor was using for quite a number of years. And they work, but they can be a pain in the neck to get back on sometimes. I like the screws. They're easier. Unless somebody has stripped out the screws, which I don't think has been done in this case. But that's pretty much it. No other surprises. Everything else is good, other than that missing bearing, which is going to be a problem, although I suspect I might be able to make the bearing from, where is it? Right there. These 2 caps over here, oh, there's my finger in there. These 2 caps right here are the governor bearings. And those little ball bearings there go inside of those governor bearings. It's very important, even though it can be a pain, to get those bearings out of these caps, clean them up, scrape out the old grease in there so that they move freely again. Otherwise, they're really not doing anything. They're not helping the governor. They're not acting as bearings. They're just stationary with the shaft riding right on them, and that's no good. So you got to get them out, make sure they're clean. How I do it is I put the bearing caps with the bearings still in them, all frozen up in there, in an old pill jar full of solvent. And I just cap it tightly and shake. Keep shaking it against the 2 banging against each other in there until the bearings are knocked loose. It can take a while. You could be doing this for 20 minutes, half an hour. You might have to let it sit overnight just to soak. I've had some pretty bad ones. This one was fairly easy. But you do have to get them loose, and that is one easy way to do it, because it's really not much you can do picking them, because they're pretty deeply set in there. You have to soak them, and shaking them in a jar like that kind of knocks them loose. But you got to get them out, and don't lose them. That's the other thing. Work over a soft cloth when you work with these things. If they drop out, and I've seen it happen, everybody thinks, oh, it's going to be stuck in there. That won't drop out. Yes, it can. You're taking your bearing caps out, all of a sudden, the little ball bearing bounces away. You don't want that, because nobody I'm aware of is remanufacturing these. So you would have to buy another bearing cap with the ball bearing in it from a parts supplier or a whole motor if you're lucky enough to have a parts machine. But I think, because I do have spare bearing caps, I can make one of these bearings work in here. First, I'm going to try my parts motors. If I have one, I'll use that one. But if I don't, I'm going to see if I could use one from something like this. I think that might work. As long as it's got play, a little bit of play, so it can move freely, and it's the height is right on that shaft when it's in there, then that'll be okay. But you can't run it without it. That's one thing I don't understand how that happened. If somebody knows enough to change a spring, they should have been able to, well, that doesn't go there. They should have been able to remember about that bearing. But it is easy to get lost if you don't know it's there. Victor uses them too. Victor also, although it's much larger on the Victrola motors, the little ball bearing is not that little on those, but you still have to get it out on those too. Well, there you go. It's a nice little motor. No excessive wear that I see, really. The gears are in nice shape. Everything's good. So we'll get it back together, and we'll assemble it into the machine once everything else is done. There's other work to be done here. And I love this wooden assembly here. All those 3 pieces of wood with the screws. This was on the motor board. This is acts as a shaft for the winding handle to go through that and into this. It kind of comes off of here. It's built into I don't have the motor board here, but I'll show you. I think I actually did show you in the last video anyway. You should be able to be seen. What kind of surprised me, though, was that. This is probably the earliest use of Phillips head screws in a phonograph that I've yet encountered. You know, those brass Phillips head screws, and they appear to be original. There's nothing to indicate they've ever been changed. They're the right size, all of the same. So that's how they made it. It's how HMV made it. Adapting a motor intended for a portable to a small tabletop. This is how they, little tricks they use to put that together. The 3 little pieces of wood with screws, quite an assembly to get that all back in there. Okay, there you go. A look at the, what number motor was this? I always forget. This is the 426. There you go. Motor number 426, manufactured by the Gramophone Company, Ltd., Hayes, Middlesex. And by the way, Victrola also has a version of this. It's used in some of their lighter weight portables from the late 1920s. I forget, I think it's the, which one is it? The 2-5? The Victrola 2-5, I want to say that, or 2-6, something like that. I forget. I don't mess with those too much. While they have an excellent motor, they're really kind of a pain with the weird tone arms they have. So I try to avoid them, and they're cheaply constructed in the cases too. Very cheap wood, I found, which can lead to dry rot problems that I really hate dealing with. But there you go.